On today's episode of the College Lacrosse Show, we look back at the three biggest results from last week: Maryland, Notre Dame, Army, all taking care of business. A good week overall for the top seeds, something we haven't really seen throughout this season. We chat about any changes we might have to our tier system from last week, look at some historical stats, and then do the usual FAFO, SICKO, and look forward to some great games this weekend. Let's get right into it. Episode 9 of the College Lacrosse Show. Let's go. Welcome to episode 9 of the College Lacrosse Show. I'm John Donville, you're Dan Arestia, and we've had this narrative throughout the entire season of chaos, and we finally got a weekend with not that much chaos. The favorites finally held up their end of the bargain for the most part this week.
Yeah, I think the chaos that we have to talk about now is kind of like, it's like long-term chaos. Like we're looking at teams that we thought would be in a certain place and aren't there.
Yeah.
We're looking at teams who might have wins that we thought were going to be really good when they got them early in the year and they aren't great, or wins that we thought might be kind of mediocre and now they're actually turning out to be good wins. So it's kind of like, where the dust is settling and we're trying to figure things out. We had midseason All-Americans. We had all that kind of stuff to try and take the temperature a little bit about where the season's at now.
Yeah, I want to say this too, by the way. As a player, we always got worked up about mid-season All-American rankings. A lot of fans get worked up about mid-season All-American rankings. I feel like I'm watching as much lacrosse as I can handle, and I take notes on every game I watch. I feel like I'm watching this thing as close as I can, and some of the All-Americans, I didn't even know their name, and I'm not saying that is bad. I'm saying this is so hard to actually try to narrow this thing down is so hard. So I think people need to just have a lot more grace on that. And for example, the goaltending, I saw someone comment on Inside the Cross, like Sean Burns should be the first team. It's like, look, a fair argument statistically.
Okay.
If McNaney's been unreal for the best team in the country, probably second best team, one of the two best teams, and then there's so many other guys. So anyway, I just want to say that, but I totally agree with you on the point about wins that you thought were going to help you. Like Cornell's Denver win is not going to mean a whole lot, and like all these teams, like early season Colgate wins and Harvard wins or losses are mattering a lot more. So we talked about those tiers last week. I thought that was a great segment. Did anything change for you this week?
I'm ready to put Notre Dame back up in the CU and Foxborough level.
Okay.
From mine, I don't remember if you had them there, but I had them in the tier below that. I might be ready to. I've got some more Hopkins stuff later, but I might be ready to knock Hopkins down a peg. A lot kind of rides for them, I think, this week. And then I think Army has shown that they can overcome some things that can be difficult in games. They did that this week. We'll get into their game soon, but I would have Army up there in the very much a contender for Final Four level. Those tiers for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's probably hard to see Army win the national championship. Feels like maybe just a little bit light offensively in terms of you wish there was one or two more or really dynamic guys. But a huge win for them this week. And by the way, I mentioned at the top of the show that like all the favorites won. People are going to look at that and say, well, number 5 or whatever UNC, but 5 versus 9 with Army hosting that game. It's kind of a pick 'em in my mind, so I don't really consider that. And UNC, played all right. Obviously,
it's not an upset. Game. It's not like it's not like a crazy upset for Army to beat UNC.
Right, exactly. And I agree about Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I watched a lot of Notre Dame film this week. I wrote an article about them, which you can find at Lacrosse Culture Daily, about what happened to their offense, and we'll talk about them more in depth. That's looking like a team who's starting to get that was a FAFO game, I thought, for Notre Dame. They said, all right, it's the last week of March. No more messing around. It's time to go. So we'll talk about that. Okay, one thing I just kind of want to talk through, and I haven't prompted you on this. We're doing this live. But I was thinking a lot about Penn State and their win over Cornell, and I think that is the single most important win for anyone out there in the country right now because their resume, like Penn State, if they lost that game, would be facing an uphill battle for at large. Can you think of a more important result for potential tournament games down the line than that one?
Um, Army's win this week against North Carolina is going to end up being big.
Yeah.
Because we always bemoan their kind of schedule, their strength of schedule. I think it's like it's in like the 20s, like it's not good.
Yeah.
But they sit at 9 in the RPI because I think a lot on the strength of that win. They get a top 5 win by beating Carolina. So I think Army's win over Carolina is going to be one of the most important if it comes down to they don't win the Patriot League and you got to start having the tough conversation. Um, Otherwise, I don't know about teams that are in the like Penn State's win over Cornell is probably the one that's doing the heaviest lifting in the country right now.
Yeah, because like Cornell somehow is still like 8 or 9 in the RPI, which I should probably, now that I'm doing this podcast, really dig into what the RPI actually is. But Princeton being at 2 losses to Maryland and Cornell doesn't really make any sense to me. But the RPI is obviously a statistical measure. There's some other teams up there. We'll get to it later. Michigan and Penn State are going in opposite directions and have like very, very similar resumes, and they play this week. So that's a big one. Also wanted to talk about, so I wrote an article earlier the year about Final Four teams and championship teams. And what I found was over since in the last like decade, from 2010, the national champion finished with a top 10 scoring offense. The lowest was 10. It was 2017 Maryland. Several of them were higher than that. Last couple of years, we've had obviously some pretty good ones. Last year, Notre Dame was first. The year before that, I think they were second. Maryland was first in 22. So I printed off the scoring offense today. The 10th rated scoring offense, so the margin line is Richmond. And to get there, Cornell is 1, and this is scoring offense per game, not efficiency. So there is some pace and other stuff. Cornell, VMI, Notre Dame, Fairfield, Colgate, Syracuse, Harvard, North Carolina, Hofstra. Some teams outside of that top 10. And remember, no one has won the national championship outside the top 10. 11, Army. Okay, right on the margin line there. 13, 14, 15, Ohio State, Penn State, and Duke. 3 teams that all have Final Four aspirations. 26th, and I'm not sure if this included last night because they put up a boatload. 26th is Princeton, which I think is way lower than most people realize. 28, Michigan, and 32 is Maryland. I think
I was going to say, I'm waiting for Maryland to show up here. They're going to be down the list.
Right, and then I think teams that are starting to work their way out of that conversation, anyways. But 35 is Denver, and 47 is Hopkins, and it just speaks to, could we have an anomalous year this year? Yeah, for sure. This Maryland team seems like they've had this kind of formula. Princeton is that scoring offense is likely a strength of schedule issue for them. They've played some pretty much exclusively really good teams. They scored 17 on Lehigh last night. If they can maybe blow out Brown or something like that, then maybe it gets up there. But it's a pretty ruthless cutoff line when you start looking at it like that. And there's some big teams. Top 10 teams that are inside the top 10 is just Cornell, Notre Dame, North Carolina, and I haven't looked at the rankings to see where Harvard is, and Syracuse, but I think they're on the just
Harvard's
outside.
At like 11, Syracuse. I had Harvard at 11, Q's at 9, 8. They're in that ballpark.
Yeah, so it's hard, man. And again, it's midseason, so these teams can turn it around, but it's an interesting season we're looking at here for sure.
I would also say, and this is just me trying to recall the list as you were reading it, and I'm not trying to poo-poo anybody here, but there are a bunch of CAA teams on that list, and a lot of them have played Hampton already. Fairfield put up 29 against Hampton.
Yeah, Hofstra's at 9, yep.
Hofstra's in there. Hofstra's got wins over like Iona and Wagner and St. John's, and they've had some high scoring games in those regards. So there's not. I don't mean to like be. I don't think I'm going to shatter any dreams when I say I don't expect Hofstra to win the national championship. But
right.
I think there's a little like within the CAA because those games are starting to get played now. Sometimes that'll happen. And then outside of that, like the teams that are maybe on the cusp have opportunities to climb a little bit because, Fairfield's not going to put up 29 on anybody else this year or 20 like they did against, St. John's, that kind of thing. So I'm not surprised to see some of those teams in there for sure. I think whenever I see a bunch of CAA teams in there, I'm always like, again, I'm not trying to I hate to make it sound like
It's math. It's math. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm like, well, have they played Hampton yet and had their, 23, 25, 27 goal game that's probably coming.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I'm not a statistician. This is not an exact science at all. It is an interesting argument that at least the last decade, these elite offenses have been more important. So
for sure.
Something interesting to look at there. I did this a few weeks ago. I'll do it again for our viewers. There are 2 teams right now without a victory in college lacrosse. One of them is Hampton. There is another team out there. I'll let our viewers sit on it for about a half hour. I think people probably know who it is, but
I think they know who
knock
it
your
is.
socks off.
When you say it out loud. Oh my God.
Yeah, and when you consider some of their results, that team has not won yet. We'll get to that. We'll get to that later. Let's start with UNC Army. I think best game of the weekend, biggest game of the weekend. I think your shout with this being an incredibly important game for Army was important. The AQ is still alive for Army. I think it was.
Yeah.
It was, if not dead, then on life support after.
If they lose that game, their at-large hopes are probably dead.
So I'm gonna start with this. This is gonna sound funny because he had a good day, but I'm gonna channel Saturday Night Live. I need more Duffy. I need more cowbell. I don't think he's holding the ball enough. He is so dynamic, and they do all this stuff with him as a picker and him as the pop guy. You don't need to do that. Just give him the ball. He shouldn't be the picker. He should be the carrier. Like, he's the best at it. So I need more Duffy. I need more cowbell. That's my big take.
Yeah, I think the Duffy Pilot matchup was great. And I think, as much as I looked at that, and there were moments in that game where I was like, oh, Pilot squarely won it there. Like, Pilot had some plays where he just literally stomped out the offense. Duffy had 3 and 3 and was a monster. Like, against an Army team that I think Army won that game on toughness. I think they played a game that, they're going to look, it's hard to go into Mikey Stadium and out tough Army at home. Like, that's just a tall order. But I thought UNC, the way they started the game, it was like they weren't quite ready for the level of kind of physicality and the kind of game that Army was like, this is the game we're going to play. And I think Carolina adjusted and settled into it, but it kind of left them playing, just a little bit from behind for most of the day. But I totally agree on Duffy. It's wild because whenever I talk about UNC, I'm always like, I need to see more depth of scoring there. But I also, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth because I would be crazy to be like, you need to, dial back the Duffy usage at all. We talked about the midseason All-Americans, which I will say the only list that matters less than preseason All-American is All-American. And then a lot of us, I would imagine a lot of voters, we take it as an opportunity to shout out the guys where it's like, we really screwed up. We didn't include that guy preseason. Right. So we're going to include him now. But I would say I voted Duffy as a first team All-American attackman. As of right, he's totally driving that offense. And as you just pointed out, it's one of the best offenses in the country. And it's doing it without a ton of depth because Duffy's so good. So I think for me, that matchup was great. I think Army deserves a lot of credit for winning that game without Will Coletti because Brady Wambach tore him up all day.
Yep.
I think we kind of saw that, that was probably what was going to be the result when you knew Coletti wasn't going to play. And I thought, as good as Duffy was, I thought Jackson Eicher was the most dangerous player on the field.
Yeah.
Anytime he touched the ball, anytime Army was attacking with any kind of numbers, it was find number 3 because something, he's going to create something here. I didn't think Carolina really had a strong answer for him over the course of the day. Carolina's defense, they've been getting by, I think, on the no-name defense kind of fill-in guys. Salucci's been good. We know Barton's good. But I don't know if you can make it through a whole season, particularly the ACC play, with a no-name defense, with the offenses that are out there, with some of the talent that's out there. So I think the Carolina defense going to have to start kind of putting its stamp on some of these games and emerging as less of just kind of we're surviving with this defense and more like we can win some matchups and win with this defense kind of unit.
Yeah, a ton of good stuff you said there. Totally agree about like emotionally being ready to go, and I think that was the theme. We're going to talk about Maryland, Penn State, Duke, Notre Dame. The home teams in all three of these games were more ready to play, and there's all sorts of things you can look to, and we talk about all sorts of fancy stats and statistics. It's a war out there, and Army was ready to go. A bunch of huge hits for Army, some of which got penalized, some of which didn't. But you got to strap your buckets up when you play the Black Knights. No kidding. These guys are going to graduate college lacrosse and join the best fighting force in the history of the planet. So good shout by me. But also, in saying that, they weren't ready for Eicher and for Plunkett in like early offense situations. Like the little kind of margins, Army just steps into those and just hammers it. Like hammers it shooting wise, but also just like I loved how aggressive Plunkett was in like 4-on-4, 5-on-5. He's like, oh, sick, I got a pull. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to like scream at your face. And the younger Plunkett is really good too. I feel like he's almost like, I know he's a big-time high school recruit. He's almost inherited some of like the freedom of his brother being so good. He kind of plays like a little looser than a lot of their guys, which I think helps them because, obviously Service Academy, they don't get all like necessarily the slickest players and stuff. The Hill Plunkett really kind of just gives them a little bit of like Goldstein-esque juice. The one mistake I think Carolina made was they went to the invert a lot on the short sticks, and they tried to kind of grind on the Army short sticks. You're gonna lose. They're too big and they're too strong, and they're obviously like tough as shit. So you got to try to get their hands off you, because if those guys get their paws on you, it's over. And I don't think they got a lot of good stuff out of those inverts.
Yeah, English had a couple. I thought Ty English, he scored 2 goals in this game. He had a couple where he attacked out of the invert or from like a low wing, and he kind of made it work. I would honestly, I think because of the physical nature of the game, like his indoor background and just kind of like put my shoulder into you and just try and get to a spot. And like, he's not really like beating his guy. He's more just kind of shooting around him after he fights to a spot on the field. But he scored a couple of goals that way. And I thought that worked for him. But yeah, I think, this Army team is tough as hell, and it's not easy to go up there and play. I love the way they play offense. And the way you mentioned, the way Hill Plunkett plays a little more like outside the lines, I guess. I love watching Army play offense because a lot of it is like, it's so simple and it's just executed well. And it's literally like, it's what you would teach like a youth team. It's like, we're going to dodge here and then we're going to pass it here and we're going to get it to the other side of the field and attack, and they're not going to be ready. And we're going to go from there. And it's like, it seems so basic and so like just stripped down, but because they execute so well and because they're so well coached, it's really just hard to cover. Like they just do it. They do it at a top 10 Division I level. And it's, it's what you teach people, like the basics concepts of offense start with this, and they get all that stuff exactly right all the time.
Yeah, and we're going to talk, like I said, we're going to talk about the 3 teams that won these big games: Army, Penn State, Notre Dame. Those teams have no questions about who they are and how they want to play. And it's starting to really show in these games. That's Army, Maryland, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
UNC, Penn State, and Duke are really looking for answers still. Not maybe UNC. UNC played pretty well. They lost to a top 10 team on the road by a goal. Like, let's not get it twisted.
In a winnable game. They had chances late. In that game for sure.
Right, and one of the other things I had written down is Sean Byrne really is a difference maker. Like he was really sharp in this game again. But Army is exactly sure how they want to play. They're really good in those early offense situations. Like I said, they made some good plays against the zone. They made some like pretty slick soft spot plays against the UNC zone, which I thought was effective. The one thing I will say about Army, they have to make better decisions in the clear. It is like everything we've talked about. They're so buttoned up offensively. They're very organized. Defensively, they're really sharp. One of the best defenses in the country. And then in the clear, they just lose the plot, and they try to run through double teams all over the place. All their D middies see an open guy and then try to run through two, it's going to kill them. And it already has against Colgate or against BU, excuse me. They got to figure it out.
Yeah, Carolina hit him with a pretty good 10-man for some of the game, and Carolina can 10-man well because Matten can ride like hell, and Duffy is fast and athletic enough to ride like hell. So, like, the pressure on your poles is going to be legit from those guys in particular, and I don't think Army handled it particularly well. They didn't show a willingness to kind of, like, look, if you're in that spot, to just, like, lob wedge it and try and drop it down to your attack in the corner on the other end of the field. Like, if you're going to turn it over in a 10-man, like, that's where you want the turnover to happen. So they weren't all that willing, I thought, to, like, try and beat the 10-man with a long ball, which I think you kind of have to be. It doesn't have to be like the full field shot that everybody loves, but they have athletic attackmen, and I think they might not have loved it because the Carolina defense is also very fast, like their footwork's great, and they're going to get to spots. But I would very much agree. I thought Carolina, when they 10-manned with a lot of pressure from Duffy, from Matten, then Army did not handle it all that well.
Yeah, before the season, I was writing about how clearing percentage has improved like every year for the last 4 or 5 years. The 10-man is back. Like every one of these games,
yeah,
it's playing a significant impact. Let's move on. But the last thing I wanted to say about Army, Army with a lead is going to be tough. I mean, they were up 3 goals and they basically sat on the ball the entire fourth quarter. Now, could you argue that they took the foot off the gas a little bit offensively and it almost hurt them? It did. It did almost hurt them.
I was going to say they played with fire a little bit doing that.
They play with fire, but still, like, you can kind of feel the stranglehold that this team is going to put on you, especially when you're playing at Army. So starts are going to be important for teams. This is not a team that you want to go down to late in the game. Okay, let's talk about
when they have Coletti back too, I would add. If they have Coletti back healthy and he's winning every faceoff too, then it makes it even worse for you.
Right, and playing against a team that doesn't have Wambach, who's the other best guy, right? Like it's it's a good formula. UNC is a team who should and does and will feel like they are alive really late in the games. They have explosive offense. They have a marquee player, and they have the faceoff guy to boot. Okay, Maryland, Penn State. A lot to go off here. I'm just going to start with the first note I had. Penn State not ready to emotionally compete. I don't think they were ready to play. And credit to Beninati and Dixon. Dixon was more critical than I've ever really heard him on the broadcast. I thought most of it was actually deserved. And I think Maryland was more ready to go from the get-go here.
Yeah, I would say, and you know what? You called out the Army, Maryland, and Notre Dame as home teams that won. They all also had great crowds. The Army crowd was huge. Maryland, I think, had more than 5,000 people there. The Notre Dame crowd was great. And I think in all the cases, the teams fed off that. I'm certain Maryland did. Mm-hmm. I think Maryland won this game by just devouring the middle of the field. Like, if you start going, they just destroyed Penn State in the middle of the field. If you start going down the box score, stats can start looking like kind of even or not even. Let it be like maybe this game was kind of close. Like, it wasn't. Penn State outshot Maryland. Turnover is pretty close to even. But I think when you do my gross and ugly ground balls subtracting faceoff wins, Penn State had 6 and Maryland had 19. Like, the middle of the field, Kohler, Stamos, Larkin, and McDonald had 5 points in this game. Penn State got held scoreless for an entire quarter. Like, McNady wasn't bad. Didn't have to be that good though. I think he made like 10 saves and like that's fine. Like, he didn't have a first team All-American game, but he's not going to lose you the game there either. And I thought Penn State's like just couldn't handle what was happening from Maryland's rope unit. The Terps rope unit was like, my God, we're just going to crush this team. And Maryland also shot pretty well. The shot total is not great. 19 shots on net and 11 of them go in against Jack Frack. That's a pretty good shooting day, even if the volume's not high. So I thought Maryland just choked this game to death between the lines, and it was like that's where they want it.
Totally agree. Maryland took 25 shots total, not on goal, at the fucking goal. It's ridiculous. Like, I don't to win a major conference game by 5, taking 25 shots is like absurd. And that ground ball number you mentioned is crazy. Maryland basically scores or they dump it in the corner at the end of the clock. And then some of the turnovers, their turnovers weren't like elite in this game. They did have a few turnovers, but very few of them seemed to really hurt you at all. And the second thing is, like, Schaller might win the Schmeisser. Like, this kid is ridiculous, man. That first quarter, he was just eating guys for lunch, and he's maybe not quite as fleet of foot as like the Ajax types, but he is a punisher. He is trying to really ruin your day. And the play of the game, in so many aspects, a bad shot by Penn State, Schaller blocks it, wins the run or runs it out to the sideline, dives, flips it back to Larkin, and then this is like something Maryland does that most people don't do. Everyone has the green light, so they're halfway through. They're subbing behind the play. So Kolar jumps on as an attackman because he's supposed to go into the defense, but then the ball changes. Instead of running to the bench, Kolar is like, all right, let's go. It goes Larkin to Kolar to Stamos, back to Larkin for a goal. That's Schaller to LSM to D-Mitty to other D-Mitty, back to the LSM who shoots an on-the-run jumper. Like, it's elite stuff. And their transition, Maryland's transition is so clean. Kolar's goal late in the game is just like perfect transition play. And then when Penn State got their transition opportunities, just kind of sloppy, low to low from like 15 yards. It's I don't know. We're kind of running out of things to say. To win a game by 5, shooting 25 shots is insane.
I think, like, even if you like, everybody has the green light. If you were to apply that to every team in America, though, I don't know if there's another rope unit who still pulls that sequence off other than Maryland's. Like, maybe Duke's. I don't know.
Agreed.
But
Agreed.
Like, I don't even know. Even if you could say everybody, you're all allowed to stay on. The only team with the personnel to make the play that got made there, I think, just might be Maryland's. So yeah, I mean, like, it was and it's a good shout to you, to the broadcast guys, because I thought Dixon was very fair about, like, which team looked like they were, ready from the second they got off the bus, kind of thing. But yeah, I thought that was a game. Yeah, like, the rope unit for Maryland was. I've had Duke's as like my favorite one to watch in the country, but it's hard to look at Maryland's and Army's too at that. Army's rope unit also is great, but Maryland's right now I think just might be the best out there, just because it's like nobody else is coming up with those kind of plays.
And no one else is the LSM depth is like Larkin. And I saw someone again commenting on the All-American thing, saying Larkin should be an All-American. Like, you could argue Jack McDonald should be an All-American. They legit have two guys, and I can't remember who the All-American LSM was.
It's Arby's. It's Fournier.
Right, and then you also have Cullen Brown. Like, you have a lot of guys. I'm not saying like those guys should be the first teamer, but you basically have two guys of that quality, and Stamos has really proven to be an important piece for them. And then they also have Gorno and Jordy Holmes is playing a bunch back there. They're running a bunch of number 6 has been out there a bunch, so they're running a bunch of guys through. And then Spanos, just he was awesome. He's really starting to feel it, and when he gets any sort of leverage on you, he just pushes into the gap. And had 3, should have had 4, an ill-timed timeout by Tills, but he's really like, he just seems like he's getting better and better and better every game.
I watch him and I see a guy who has realized since the season started, like, I'm one of the best attackmen in America. Like, the media polling and all that kind of stuff might not have me there, but he's like, oh, I'm comfortable being like the guy. I'm comfortable being one of the best attackmen out there, whether or not people regard me that way. Like, that's what I saw from the way he played against Penn State, for sure. He was just like, I'm just going to take this spot on the field from this guy and go score a goal there. It was like a confidence level and an assertiveness that I thought looked like somebody who thinks he's like, a first team All-American level player.
Yeah. The guy he reminds me of is now this guy was a Tort winner, is Dylan Malloy a little bit, in the sense that, like, if he gets an like, it's like, okay, I'm here, you're here, we're going to race to there, and you're just not going to be able to push me off my line, and I can score through contact. He's got that kind of, like, ability to win in the diagonals that Malloy has. Now, Malloy's one of the great college players of all time, so again, I'm not getting carried away here, but I think he kind of just reminds me of that. Penn State, again, looking for answers. The only thing they really had success with was, like, pick and rolls, 2-man game in the high wings. So credit to their staff. They kind of did unlock some stuff there. They scored 6 goals in the second half, which not a lot of teams have done. And then McNaney, you mentioned it, didn't have the volume, but made some big saves on the doorstep that I think were crushers. When Penn State finally got some looks, his saves were few but important. And if there's a better outlet passer and a quicker outlet passer, I haven't seen it. He's a big reason for this Maryland transition game. They're up and out. Okay, let's switch to Duke, Notre Dame. I'll leave this again. I had the same point written down as my first point. Duke was not ready to compete on the field with Notre Dame.
Yeah. I think the Irish, this is a feel-good win for you for sure. This is one you kind of needed, and to your point, we've got our shit together here. It's late March. We figured it out. I thought Jake Taylor played his best game of the year for them. Mm-hmm. I thought he was really, really dynamic. CT bias, Matt Jeffrey blew by the best short stick defensive midi in America and scored a goal in the first quarter. I'm just going to point out that if they're getting that kind of stuff, then that's what makes Notre Dame difficult to deal with for the last 2 years is yes, they have a Kavanaugh. They have a star in attack. They have a star here or there, but they also just run really deep. They also always have had just a lot of midfield depth, a lot of guys who can hurt. So them kind of finding that I think is important. It's also worth shouting out that Sean Light warmed up but did not play in this game. Yep. And so they won this game without, arguably the best defenseman in the country. Certainly something to watch going forward. But, I think that's also kind of a statement for Notre Dame to say we can hold Duke to whatever they held to. I think 7, right? Was it 6 or 7? Yep. Without Sean Light, they held Duke scoreless in the second quarter. A Duke team like that with that level of talent shouldn't have scoreless quarters, but it's a credit to Notre Dame for doing it. So, and again, a great crowd. You saw the football team out there. Everybody loves when that happens. But, I thought this was a game that was to your point, a good FAFO kind of game, a good Notre Dame, getting their groove back kind of game against a good team. And I honestly don't know where this leaves Duke. I keep ranking Duke somewhere in the mid-teens or something, and they keep coming in the poll at 12 or 11. I'm are we seeing the same team? Yeah. I don't see it with them right now. I love their rope unit. They have some great individual players out there, but I don't see a dangerous team at all when I watch Duke right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. They just lack some identity offensively. I don't think they fully know who they are. I think the Denver loss was a bad loss. I think it kind of slid by some of the national consciousness a little bit. I think Denver is probably still getting a little bit of the benefit of the doubt nationally. People don't seem to think that's that bad of a loss, but if you look at the numbers, I think that probably should have dinged Duke a little bit worse. I want to be very clear. I'm not criticizing the player at all here, but there was a lot to talk in the broadcast about how McGuire loves covering the best players, can cover the best players. I just thought they were a little bit sloppy with this of just switching him on to Faison and Kavanaugh all the time. It's he can guard those guys better than almost any other short stick can. It's still too hard. They're too good of players.
It doesn't mean you should design it for that to happen.
Right, and the other Notre Dame middies are good. If McGuire takes Angrick for a day, and let's just say if you're a Duke fan, you're looking at the best form of McGuire, he takes Angrick out of the game, that's important. Angrick's a good player. That's a valuable thing to do. And I just thought they were a little bit I don't know. It's almost like they're trying to prove that he could cover those guys. And then Faison is a freaking SEC level wide receiver. He's a hard guy to cover, man. I don't know what to tell you. Kavanaugh is a fucking sick player. And I thought they just gave up switches a little too easily. And then they were just a little lazy off ball. And Notre Dame just stepped into a bunch of gaps and roped it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point to make. And I kind of just dropped it in there. But they have a really good rope unit, right? McGuire and Gray and Crisp, all those guys, yeah. They're really good. And when you have guys like that, you're fortunate because it often means you don't have to be super matchup dependent because you trust these guys all the time. But to your point, it doesn't mean that it's good if Aiden McGuire is guarding Chris Kavanaugh or Jordan Faison or whatever. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't still be looking to slide pretty aggressively and support that matchup. It doesn't make McGuire a worse player. It makes the team defense like
Better.
schemed correctly if you're doing that.
Right.
So, you need to be ready to support short sticks against guys like that. Like McGuire is going to win the matchup against 95% of offensive players in America, but like the other 5% of guys are still like Kavanaugh and Faison.
Yeah. Notre Dame has top 5% players on their team.
Yeah, like so you need to support the matchup. Like you can't, it's not like lazy or even it's not like arrogant really either. It's just like stick to what you do well. Like stick to what like the right way to play defense is, which is if your shorty's got a tough matchup, you get ready to go and you support like when the dodge happens so that you don't get cooked. That's literally how Matt Jeffrey scored his goal. Like he just ran by Aiden McGuire and scored, and there wasn't support there. So like, he's, again, we're not, like you said, we're not criticizing like the players here. It's more of like as a team defense, you got to support the shorties. There aren't too many teams out there, or in those kind of matchups, like you can't just sit back and hope that your shorty is going to cover a first team All-American level Dodger or a guy who literally spent all football season getting separation at the line of scrimmage and running routes for a team in the national championship game. Like he's going to beat your shorties.
Yeah,
like
it's fucking awesome. Yeah. He's an awesome player. Yeah.
Like, you put Danny Logan on him. You're still probably going to have to go slide to that guy. Yeah. Like I'm sorry. I don't mean to bear the bearer of bad news here, but you need to be ready.
I agree. Totally agree. FAFO game for the ND defense as well. Nate Schwitzenberg, number 27, drew the matchup with Malaver. Malaver played pretty well. I think had some numbers, but Schwitzenberg just looks the part. I thought he was overall very good in this game, and just to be able to backfill Sean Light with a player like Schwitzenberg, just that looks like that. He looks like Jack Kilty in a 27 jersey, and that's why Notre Dame is really good on defense every year. They recruit well. They have a type. You don't see a lot of little guys out there for Notre Dame on the defensive side of the ball, and it's proven to be a good strategy. Anything else on that? Those are all notes I had before we move on to the FAFO of the week.
No, I think that's most of what I had there on Notre Dame. Again, I think big statement for them. As I said, for me to watch it, as much as I downplay Duke, the way they executed in that game is enough for me to say like Final Four team for sure. If I had any doubts a week ago, I feel good about them going back.
Yeah, they have just a lot of juice in the midfield, and McLean is starting to figure out attack. Taylor he's nasty, man. That shot, he had a shot where he looked like he was going high with his head and shoulders, and then he put it low. The best I've ever seen of that is my buddy Marcus Holman, and the guys who can get that shot down, I think it's sick. And a good shot called by Kark. Kark read it the whole way, called it out on the broadcast, so credit where it's due there. Okay, FAFO, I got a couple of them. Why don't you lead us off?
All right, I got two as well. My first one is literally just the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. All of a sudden, their resume is not good. Like their resume as a team is not good. Their RPI is 18. Their wins are Denver, Towson, Georgetown, Loyola, UVA, and Navy. And I don't know if there's a list of wins for anybody in the country that we thought would be better, but is actually worse than that list of wins.
Right.
This week they are home. They're at Homewood. It is homecoming. Ohio State is coming to Homewood. This is going to be like a ton of alumni there. Everybody who plays in that band is going to show up with their instruments and all that stuff. If you put out the effort that they've put out the last 2 weeks at homecoming on Homewood, and when they really need one, that is a FAFO kind of moment. So that a FAFO notice really for the Hopkins Blue Jays for me.
Yeah, totally agree. That Ohio State team fits the bill of a lot of these other teams we're talking about. They know exactly how they want to play, and if you hesitate, if you're nervous against the Ohio State team, they're going to eat your lunch. I'm going to go. It's hard for me to really say why this is FAFO, but I just want to talk about it. CJ Kirst right now has 45 goals in 9 games. If you make it to the national championship or like the Final Four, you play like 18 to 20 games. So CJ Kirst is potentially on pace for 90 goals this year. He has 16 assists. He has only 7 turnovers on those points. I guess he's 45 and 16 which puts him at 60 points. So 60 points, 7 turnovers. He has 10 caused turnovers. He's a plus in the caused turnover category as the best attackman in America. He's shooting 53% on 45 goals. Lavelle was kind of the boogeyman. I thought credit to Cornell. They didn't try to force that too much. CJ found most of his, as he always does, in the flow. They beat the wheels off Albany yesterday. But I'm not sure people realize, and I think maybe it's because there's not ESPN nationally broadcasted games. Like, we're potentially looking at one of the best seasons of all time. He has 45 goals, and we're not even close to playoff time yet.
Yeah, I would say I jinxed the single game record, so let's just jinx the season one too. The record for goals in a season is held by Miles Thompson and John Reese at 82. I think the number is. Like, again, he's at 45 now. Like, if you're looking at the way he's playing and the pace he is on, 82 is absolutely in play for this guy.
Yeah,
it's insane. It's insane, and the shooting percentage number is almost more ridiculous. Right. Like, I think coming into the Albany game, he was almost at 60%. He was at 58% or something. The idea that you could be like an attackman in college lacrosse, and more often when you shoot it, it goes in the net than anything else happens, is insane. It's just absolutely insane. Right. If you shoot it, it's more likely to be a goal than to be anything else.
Yeah, the point you want to hit as a shooter is 30 and above. He's at 50. Yeah. 40 is insane. Like, Peyton Cormier was in the 40 range, which is ridiculous. Like I just don't know if people realize. And then 16 assists, by the way, like, guys like Miles were not putting up like a bunch of assists too. These guys were off ball like killers, and most of them were playing with elite feeders too. Like, O'Keefe had a 78 goal year, and Miles and O'Keefe are two of the best players to ever play college lacrosse. I'm not taking anything away, but stylistically, they were off-ball guys in an offense with elite feeders, and they formed the two of the best partnerships we've ever seen in the sport. That's like not what's happening here. CJ has more sock tricks this year than not sock tricks. He's got 5 goals. 5 times he scored 6 or more, and they played 9 games. So 4 times he scored 6 or less, 5 times he scored 6 or more. It's insane.
I would also say, I think coming into the season, I remember looking at this coming into the season. If you look at how many goals he scored in his career and how many of them are game-winning goals, I think it's something between like 30 and 40% of them coming into this season were game-winning goals. It was like he scored the game-winning goal or something like that in like 30 or 40% of the games he had played. It's like almost half the time he takes the field, he scores the game winner. It's
crazy. Can you take me?
I know. Higher? I'm gonna install TikTok just to make that for you. I swear to God.
I'll get to it this week. Sunday game for me. Yeah. More time. Yeah. Anyways, that's my big FAFO for the week.
My second FAFO of the week is for the concessions workers at Mikey Stadium.
Okay.
If you haven't been to Mikey Stadium this year, you haven't been there recently, one whole side of the stadium is like giant stone bleachers. It used to be giant stone bleachers. They demolished all of that, and they're building this whole new like seating and premium seats and all this other cool stuff there. It's supposed to be ready in time for football, which there's nothing there right now is where this is going. Yeah. It's just construction vehicles and dirt there right now. But there used to be, that's where everybody would sit, and there's a ton of concession things underneath it kind of in the concourse, and that's all gone. So everybody sits on the other side. There were like 3 concession windows open for the thousands upon thousands of people who were at that game. The food line at Mikey Stadium, I'm not exaggerating, I'm dead serious because I stood in it, was 50 minutes long. It was like an hour long. If you went to get food, it meant you were sacrificing, probably seeing a little more than a quarter of the game. It was that insane. So concession workers, like, this is what happens if you can't open up more of that stadium or put more like food options out there somewhere, was people waiting in line for an hour. Some of it was like kids being idiots. Like, all right, if you're 16 or 17 and you're listening to this and you go to a game with your buddies and the 5 of you go to get something to eat, don't order one at a time. Don't go up there and be like, I'd like 1 lemonade, $5. Next, I'd like what? Like, just have one kid buy the 5 of them. It's faster. It's one transaction. Please don't
It'll
do this.
Come out in the wash. Yeah.
Like you're gonna
You
figure
all have
it out.
Venmo
It's
anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. But it was getting desperate. I saw a guy walk away from the booth with a tray that must have had 25 hot dogs in it, and it was like, forget it. Nobody in my section is going to deal with this. He might have just been doing the secondary market. I don't know. He might have just been trying to just go crush with people who didn't want to wait. But ooh man, that concession scene at Mikey was dicey over the weekend.
I love it. I love this podcast. Love it. Okay, I'm gonna go quick because we have been going for a while here. UMass FAFO, big win over St. Joe's. They are playing at one of the slowest paces in the country. They want to drag you into the deep end and see how long you can tread water. Good win for them. I think the dream of a 2-bid A10 appears to be over with that one.
Yeah.
My last one, we have an epidemic of terrible moving pick calls. If the defender blows you up, how are you supposed to not move? And also, there is this, seems to be consensus among the referees. Well, first of all, there's no consensus. The officiating on pick calls is way different game to game. The rule is you have to be still when you make contact. It doesn't mean you have to be still 10 feet before you make contact and remain still. If you get there right before the defender and get still, that is not a moving pick. And in the UNC game, Army took the approach of if you see a picker, just obliterate the guy because they'll just call it a moving pick. It's the most insane call in the sport. It pisses me off as a guy who literally tries to pay my bills by setting picks in the field game. Anyways, it's annoying me. Okay, Sicko. You go first.
I have two that I would consider good. The first one is Manhattan and Siena.
Yeah.
Okay. The Jaspers, Manhattan is never going to score a ton of goals. Honestly, without looking, I'm going to bet they've hit double digits like 2 or 3 times all year. But Manhattan is always awesome in net. As we were talking, I think it was last week about like goalie factory schools. Like Manhattan has gone from Brendan Krebs, All-American and now a pro, to Joe Persico, who was an All-American and was a really good goalie who was just stuck behind Krebs. And now they have Connor Hapward in net, who is awesome. They always have sick goalies. So you get the Manhattan goalie play against Siena, who has a senior-heavy attack that can score goals like crazy. They have Pratt Reynolds, who's currently at 33 goals and 2 assists on the season. One of my favorite kind of players to watch.
Beauty.
So it's a trio of seniors in attack. Siena's actually a really good team with a lot of guys back from last year. Manhattan is a good team that's going to try and like play the low-scoring game. That could be a fun game between two teams that are like, obviously both like not super great, but fun to watch.
Yeah, I have the scoring offense in front of me based on our previous segment. Manhattan 62nd in scoring offense. They're 5-5. They're 500 teams.
Yeah, they're a 500 team.
One of the worst
man.
offenses in America. Okay, I have a standing Sicko game. Every game remaining of Loyola.
It's gotta be.
Loyola has not won yet, folks. They lost to number 2 Maryland by a goal. They lost to Hopkins by a goal. They've lost 4 one-goal games. They won the national championship within the last 15 years. They have been very good. They will be very good again. I think this is just an anomalous year. They have like 22 freshmen. But the Hounds have not won a game yet. They are on Sicko. They have a residency on the Sicko game of the week for me.
Yeah, I mean, we gave me as a Sicko game last week, and it was easily the best of the Sicko games. That was a 7-3 game between Lehigh and Loyola. Oh, God almighty.
Gross.
The other Sicko game I would give you is LIU and Robert Morris. I came into the season, I really liked LIU. I think they're they were one of the teams where everybody graduated everybody. LIU was one of the few teams that didn't. They had won. They lost to, they blew my narrative because they lost to Wagner last week. But they're 2-1 in conference. Bobby Moe has been way better lately. They are 3-0 in conference. The NEC is absolutely anybody's. Let's be real about it. Lemoyne is 3-0 in the NEC. Lemoyne right now might win the NEC, which would be rad. But LIU, I think, can still do it. VMI is looming. LIU Robert Morris is one of those games where it's like somebody's going to be, top 2 in the conference when this one's over. It's big for the NEC conference tournament seeding. So LIU and Bobby Moe is my other one.
Yeah, I think the NEC should start playing their games on like Tuesday nights and try to do what Maction does in football. I know we also have a Mac in lacrosse, but the NEC seems more apt to host it. Okay, we do have quickly want to run through some game previews here. Not a ton. We definitely have gone for a while here already. Let's do Cuse Notre Dame. We actually haven't talked about Cuse in a while. Sneaky, like pretty on a pretty good run here. 6 straight wins. A nice win at Virginia. I know it's not the normal team, Virginia team we're used to, but it's still a difficult place to win. And they've kind of avoided the big letdown here. They've won 5 in a row, and their only 2 losses are to Maryland and Harvard, 2 pretty good teams. So Cuse is still in the hunt, but this is their best opponent they've seen in a few weeks.
Yeah, for sure. As much as I gave Hopkins the FAFO for having like a resume that might actually not be that great, Cuse kind of needs a big time win. Their best wins right now are Hopkins, who I just told you is like kind of on fraud watch, and the Virginia game that they just won. Like the Colgate win, like, okay, I don't know, but otherwise, like Jacksonville, Vermont, Towson, Utah, Manhattan, like those really don't do anything. So Cuse kind of needs this one. They're in the Dome. This is the last time they're in the Dome for a few weeks. They travel to Long Island to play Cornell, but it's not the Dome. And then they're at Duke. So that's, a road game. And then they get Carolina in the Dome to close the season. So they're going to need some help, I think, from the home crowd. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the Sean Light question is the big one for me in this game. If he can go, then, I'm sure Notre Dame is thinking like, we'll just stick him next to Joey Spallina for the duration, and we'll see what we can do everywhere else, which is a good formula for Notre Dame and usually something that Syracuse sometimes doesn't handle well. So I think that's the big piece for me is Sean Light healthy in this game. And after that, I think faceoff spot is big. Johnny Mullen has quietly put together a really good season facing off for Syracuse.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was on the midseason All-American list. I think I voted him for a spot in it because he's been so good. But I think what makes Johnny Mullen good is that he has found ways to adjust in game, and it doesn't matter that they don't run deep at the spot because he's been able to kind of find a way to be successful. In that Hopkins game, I think he lost the first 7 faceoffs of the game, and then like ran away with it after that. He kind of just figured it out and figured himself out and found a way to kind of just be a little faster to the ball and kind of worked his exits out a little bit better. But I think the faceoff spot there, who can kind of maintain it that way, and then the Syracuse defensive midfield, if Notre Dame plays like they did against Duke, will have their hands full. This is one where you want to see a guy like Carter Rice have a big day. You want to make sure that they're not going to be able to hold matchups. This isn't going to be one where you're going to be trying to, not switch or not kind of adjust. But Syracuse is going to have to be quick to support, I think, on a lot of these guys. And it's a big test for, again, I think they have the best DC in the sport in John Oderna. So it is a big test for him and that defense to see kind of what they can do. Maybe they throw a little zone at Notre Dame here or there. We'll see if Notre Dame has guys who can beat them from range, that kind of thing. But I think matching up with Notre Dame's offensive depth and then having a healthy Sean Light, to me, are keys for Notre Dame.
I would strongly suspect that we'll see a double pull with the short stick on McLean. And Notre Dame's getting pretty good at answering that because they make McLean the picker in the big little game, which he's very comfortable with, and he's pretty crafty, savvy back there. But I think especially that first group for Notre Dame really puts a lot of pressure on you. And Cuse's rope is good, but they are a little bit undersized, and Notre Dame is massive. Other than Faison and Jeffrey, the other guys, and maybe Harris a little bit, but they have Angrick, who's a big dude. They have Fisher Finley, who's a big dude, and then Seymour, who's a load as well. So you got to be prepared for the meat on Notre Dame. I think the chances that they see zone pretty good as well. You just worry about Kavanaugh and Taylor specifically in the zone, but you're picking poison. They're gonna have to shoot well. Obviously, Richard Deli's kind of been unheralded, not unheralded because he's got the credit he deserves, but he's a really he's not Lee Mentzman, but he's not that far behind what Lee Mentzman was. And then I think the biggest key for Cuse offensively is you got to get switches. Notre Dame is a team that really plays the ball hard. They try not to look at the incoming picks and things like that. You have to try to get Spallina off of these guys. It is too hard to go at light. And even this Schwitzenberg is a guy who looks primed and ready for those big matchups, especially with big attackmen that want to bang. It's a long day. Notre Dame has some meat back there. So those are the two things I'll be watching. Can you get switches? Can you guard the Cuse? Or the Notre Dame midfield? This feels like a big Michael Grace, Billy Dwan game, getting up and banging with some of those guys.
I would also say, as I shout out how great John Aderna is, breaking news, congrats, he's your new DC with the Boston Cannons.
Yeah.
That info just got released by the PLL. So Boston Cannons new DC is the Syracuse DC, John Aderna, again, for my money, the best in the game. So a lot of moves getting made here with your Boston Cannons these days.
Sick, yeah. Enterprise defense coming to the Cannons. I've obviously known about this for a little while. So yeah, congrats to Coach O. Looking forward to working with him this summer. Follows Coach Mikey Thompson, who's at Christopher Newport, Kyle Hartzell last year. We've had some sharp minds back there, so that's been really cool. But totally, good shout out for you. Okay, Michigan, Penn State. An interesting game. Two teams going in very different directions. But I actually think the more interesting part of this is to start looking at the resume for both these teams. So Michigan, 6-4, best win at Maryland. Losses to UNC, Duke, Harvard, and Notre Dame. Those are four teams within the top 12 or so. Maybe, I'm not sure what Harvard came in at this week. Penn State, 6-3, best win at Cornell. Losses to Maryland, Ohio State, Princeton. Three teams that are all in the top 10. So no bad losses. Arguably the two best wins in the entire country this year. Michigan winning at Maryland last week. Penn State winning at Cornell. But it feels like Michigan's really coming again for their playoff push. And Penn State, they really need an answer here.
Yeah. As you said there with Penn State, it's their biggest results are the top four teams in the country. They beat number one and they lost to 2, 3, and 4. Yeah. Like it's they lost to Princeton by just a goal too. I think that was an overtime game. So I think with this game, as you mentioned, the momentums here are things going in different directions. Michigan is as hot as it gets, right? They went to Maryland and won. They beat Hopkins. 2 straight to start Big Ten play. Like they should be feeling good. Penn State, the reverse, a tough loss to Ohio State, a tough loss to Maryland. I don't know, like the games that Ohio State and Maryland play are very similar, and Penn State struggles very much with that type of game. I don't know if Michigan can play the same type of game that Maryland can, that Ohio State can, of we're just going to find a guy in our offense who's going to beat you. It doesn't have to be this guy who you think's the best player. You know, we're going to be able to hold every matchup we have on defense. We're going to be able to win the middle of the field. Penn State, again, if they're healthy, and you're hoping they're getting a little healthier now, shouldn't have to play that same type of game as they've had to play the last 2 weeks. That clearly is not a game that suits them at all. I don't know if there's anybody left on the schedule, honestly, that can play the way Ohio State and Maryland do. So I kind of like the chance for Penn State to bounce back here. It is on the road. They do have to go to Michigan to do it, and that is kind of tough. Again, Michigan's going to have a home crowd there that's going to be fired up because look how good their team is in conference play. But for most of the year, Michigan wasn't ranked. I didn't think they looked like a team that had the look of a team that should be ranked, and really the Maryland win kind of thrust them back into the spotlight. That came off of like an ugly loss to Notre Dame where the Irish just absolutely handled them. So yeah. I think this team was a team that was kind of close to being dead and has played itself back into life, and that could do a lot for you. But again, I think I look at Penn State, I look at their matchups on defense where the guy like Ross and Cohen matching up, or, it could be Parnham, whoever it is. I kind of feel like edge Penn State in a lot of those individual matchups, and I don't feel like Michigan will be able to hold matchups and not have to slide often to this Penn State offense if it's healthy. So I'm feeling better about Penn State in this game. Again, it's just the last 2 losses are the same type of game, and it's a type of game that Penn State is just not built to play. And Michigan is also like just not built to play that type of game. So I kind of like where Penn State's at here.
Yep. A proud group over there. I think we're going to see what Penn State's made of here. Like it's not quite now or never, because if Michigan wins, based on how good the RPI is of both these teams, I don't think it's going to kill them, but like it's not going to help. Like if you're a Penn State fan looking for an AQ, you really start to need some of these wins, and still a lot of meat on the bone for Penn State with. Oh, they got Hopkins and Rutgers actually after this, so an opportunity to finish reasonably strong for Penn State, and they really made a lot of mistakes in the Maryland game. Like they can clean up some of that stuff. Yeah, they're injured. They don't have a TJ Malone type guy, but they really beat themselves against Maryland. Really bad decisions in the clear. They made some bad risks, I thought, on defense that killed them, and then they give up a lot of skip passes. And I think that'll be a focus for them. It's like you just got to knock some of those down. I thought some of them kind of just whizzed right by the Penn State guys, and they can get that stuff cleaned up. So that should be a fun one. I think that's really the first game that feels like it has major NCAA tournament ramifications. Like whoever wins that game is going to be really in a driver's seat. And whoever loses has a lot of work left to do.
Yeah, Penn State's RPI is 6, Michigan's is 11. It's like that's high stakes right there.
Which is like probably going to like roughly flip, I guess, if they lose this game. And you think how many AQs are there? Like what, 8 or 9? So 11, 12, 13. That starts to get in the RPI range where it starts to get a little murky for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's Penn State's got like the Cornell win's going to do them a ton of favors as long as Cornell keeps doing what they're doing. Yeah. But otherwise, like Penn State's, against the top 5, I think is winless. The top 5 RPI, I should say. The top 5 RPI right now is Princeton, Maryland, Notre Dame, North Carolina, and the Harvard Crimson are 5 in the RPI. Penn State's 0-2 against that group. They're 0-1 against teams 11-20. This is another 11-20 matchup. And then they're 5-0 against teams at 21 or worse. So as you start building a resume, it's like, well, they beat Cornell, then a bunch of bad teams. Is that enough to get you an at-large if things don't go well for them in the Big Ten? There's going to be a lot of teams fighting for those at-larges that are going to make it a difficult convo for sure.
Yeah, and it's the same formula for Michigan. One big win and no bad losses so far. So Michigan has a harder road left after this one. They play Ohio State and at Rutgers. Rutgers showing some life, by the way, the last few weeks. Certainly not a throwaway game. Again, very unusual. Like to your point about games that you thought were going to mean more early in the season. There's also stuff that is going to mean a lot more now, late in the season. For example, Cornell's last 2 games are against Harvard and Dartmouth. In a normal year, you might have certain thoughts about those games. This year, those are going to be 2, dogfights. We didn't talk about Princeton, Dartmouth last week, but Dartmouth showing they are good. It's not a fluke. And, there's just sometimes too many games to get to. Of all these teams, by the way, talking about schedule stuff, Syracuse has a brutal 4-week stretch ahead of them. They have Notre Dame, Cornell, Duke, North Carolina. So there are a lot of scenarios left out there for Syracuse.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, 2 of those games aren't in the Dome. And it's always a tougher proposition for Cuse when they got to play away from home.
Yeah, winning on the road is hard. Every team is better at home than they are on the road. Cuse is more better at home. It's a bigger difference for Cuse than almost anywhere else, in my opinion. Okay, I am in the beautiful city of Las Vegas on Sunday, taking on the Toronto Rock. Where are you heading this weekend? On
Saturday, I am going up to Middletown, Connecticut to enjoy some D3 ball between Wesleyan and Tufts. Top 10 matchup. Tufts is number 1. They are a wagon. Wesleyan took a tough loss last week, but are super talented. That's like probably the 2 best teams in the NESCAC right there. So I'm going up to see them play.
Beautiful. Hopefully not 50 minutes in the hot dog line there. So enjoy. Thanks for listening, folks. It's been episode 8 of the College Lacrosse Show and episode 9 of the College Lacrosse Show. And we will see you next week.
All right.